And welcome in, everybody, to the MHRT Podcast. I'm your host, Mundungus Creevy, alongside my co-host, 6'10", Mr. Boggins and Glenn Hauser. We are a fan-led, Broncos-based podcast, filling you in on all things NFL news, but more importantly, Broncos news. We go live every Thursday at 7654 on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. Now, we are on a quest for 1,000. If you have ever wondered how to support a growing channel, the absolute best way to do that is to subscribe, hit the thumbs up, comment, and share. The more interaction we get on the pods, the more eyes they get in front of it. And if that wasn't enough incentive, Glenn Hauser has said that once we hit 1,000 subscribers, he will do the very next podcast episode wearing the Barrelman barrel. And that's it, just the barrel. That's what I'm saying, just the barrel. So make sure you slap that thumbs up button, subscribe, turn on notifications, and share so that you can know when we go live, anytime we post amazing content, and so that other Broncos fans out there in Broncos country can know that we are here. Now, today is a very special episode of the MHRT Podcast because we are being joined by a very special guest. He is the director of video content for the Pro Football Network, the Broncos analyst on the Locked On Network, and the host of the Locked On Broncos podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, Cody Rourke.
Woo!
Okay, so professional.
Oh my goodness, that was great, gentlemen. I don't know how you guys aren't at 1K yet, but if you're a Broncos fan, if anybody that listens to me, you need to be making sure that you subscribe to what these guys have going on here, Mile High Roundtable. They do a great job of bringing a fan-led conversation to the Denver Broncos. So thank you so much, gentlemen, for having me. Very happy to be here with you today.
It's our honor, man. Our pleasure.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. We're psyched. Thank you.
Welcome.
So I guess we'll kind of just go right into it. I mean, there's obviously, I think we're going to get some questions here in the comments, but I guess my main question is, obviously the big story of OTAs and minicamp so far has been the quarterback battle. Now, how much would you say that the quarterbacks play in OTAs and minicamps goes into the overall quarterback decision going into training camp?
Nah, that's a great question. Now, it's not going to factor too much. Now, in OTAs and minicamp, what the Broncos are doing, every rep that each quarterback is taking, everything is filmed. So what happens is, after practice, these film clips are cut up, they're stored in individual files, and coaches will go back and they'll watch what this quarterback did on this play. And the way that they formulate this data is incredible because they'll have specific play, they'll have specific play call, and then they'll compare and contrast. If there was an interception, was it a very bad mistake or was it a tip pass that was intercepted? They formulate all this stuff into their decision-making process, but Vic Fangio said it this week, it only equates to about 2 to 3% of what's to come. 97% is going to come in training camp and also preseason. So really these guys, they've been getting ingrained a little bit, getting used to pushing each other, getting some reps and some chemistry with different receivers. But it's going to matter when you have the offensive line because there's no contact in OTAs or minicamp. So once the offensive line can put the pads on and they can engage with the defense, that's when everything is going to start to be evaluated with a little bit more grain of salt.
So Cody, what do you expect the two quarterbacks to be doing these next few weeks before training camp starts? It sounded like Teddy was thinking about going to South Florida and maybe flying some guys in, but it sounds like Drew is planning on being local and working hard. And what do you think?
Yeah, my expectation would be I expect they probably take this weekend off. They probably take tomorrow and Saturday off, maybe Sunday, and then get back to work on Monday, obviously away from the team facility, but leading their own kind of workouts. I think that's what we're going to see them do because you don't want to do too much, right? Because if you do too much building up to training camp is brutal. It is grueling. It's taxing on the body and the mind because once you report for training camp, you're not at your house. You report to the team hotel. You're away from your family. It is very restricted and constructed to where players are around each other and the coaches. So it eliminates those distractions. So you want to have a little bit of leeway. You want to have some rest time before everything gets really crazy. That's what they're going to do, but they're going to put the work in. Drew mentioned he's going to work on fundamentals, footwork, throwing with guys. But then again, you also want to be cautious because if something happens, then all of a sudden you enter training camp, hey, this guy's injured. He may not be 100%. So you really want to avoid that, but you still want to get better every single day.
Do you think around camp the consensus is kind of 50-50 for who would want at QB1, or do you think that a lot of the organization is hoping, obviously, that Drew Lock progresses to be that QB1 and that Teddy is just kind of a solid backup answer?
Well, the writing is that, it's a 50-50 quarterback competition, but I think internally the Broncos organization, they want Drew Lock to pan out. They want him to eventually be the guy. And this is it. I feel like 2020 is the year where Drew's going to have to prove it, or he's not going to get the chance after this year. You have to perform now, because George Paton, coming in as a brand new GM, he didn't want to give up on Drew Lock too quickly, rightfully so. You want to do your due diligence. There's things about Lock's game that we can all admit, is really great. It's flashy. He does these awesome things. They're like, hey, if he can stack on that, be consistent, Broncos are going to be fine. But then it goes back to the inconsistencies, the decision-making at times. That's been the issue. If he can rectify that, eliminate those, and his production increases, Denver's going to be in good hands. But it's an accumulation. It's a grind. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And you probably know this from the fan perspective as well. I mean, Broncos fans necessarily always haven't been patient, and rightfully so. Losing seasons, they're taxing. I get that. But it's a new regime under Vic Fangio and George Paton, and I think it does take time. But the Broncos, they're really focused on quarterback this year. If Drew Lock can't be the guy, they're going to do whatever they can to amplify that position next season. Or if one certain unicorn suddenly becomes available, Denver's going to be aggressive in trying to get him. But, as of right now, I don't think that's much of a possibility.
You know what? One question I have for you, Cody, is, there's been a lot of talk about our defense and how it can be top 5, maybe even top 3. And that's just seeing it on paper. Where would you say our defense currently would rank?
Well, it's hard to ignore the fact that they could be the best defense. I definitely think top 5 on paper is the legitimate place to put them right now. I mean, it would be, I feel like for me, saying if they were number 1, people would say, hey, you're biased, right? So I think that they have the potential. They have the potential to be a top defense in the NFL. Absolutely. I would say right now, though, top 5 on paper is the realistic projection. I mean, when you factor in Von Miller coming back, Bradley Chubb, if those guys can stay healthy, do you know how game-changing that's going to be, especially for the secondary that's loaded, by the way? That's going to create so many different opportunities for this defense and for this team to have success in 2021.
So shortly before we went live, Troy Rank reported that the Broncos are extremely close to the 85% vaccinated players. How important do you think that is as a team, especially a young team like this?
Well, I think a lot of it too, because anytime we talk about the medical side of things, there's always a fine line. But I think for what we've seen so far in the NFL, I mean, you know how NFL teams are so frustrated by the process that was due to the COVID restrictions last year, because you'd have an exposure and all of a sudden these guys have to sit out. There was so much ambiguity in the NFL, the NFLPA side of things. So they've made it, the Broncos coaching staff, they're all 100% vaccinated. So you're not going to have any restrictions where they don't have access to players. That's what the NFL and the NFLPA have put out there. Now, in terms of players, they're going to have these different testing requirements. Players who are fully vaccinated, they don't have to have a mask. They can be in the team facility. There's no capacity limits. But if you are not vaccinated as a player, you're going to have to go through the daily testing procedure that everybody did in 2020. You're going to have to wear a mask, and you're also going to have to be in limited capacity around everybody else. So I think the NFL, the NFLPA, they're just trying to find a safeguard that's going to benefit both sides, because obviously there's players that may have religious beliefs that may impact them not being able to get it. So you have to be able to provide those accommodations. But I think for the most part, I think we'll see that number bump up to maybe 90%, 95% by the time the season starts.
We got EJ coming in. Do you think our offense can score more than 25 to 30 points a game this season with either Lock or Teddy?
Well, you better hope they can, right?
Yeah.
19 points per game, 22 points per game. That's just not going to get it done. I mean, last year in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs were the top scoring offense in the NFL. They averaged 34 points per game. You have to get, at least in my opinion, because it changes every year based on scoring outputs. But if the Broncos can get above maybe 25 to even 25, I'd say it might be too less, right? Which is hard to say because 25 is a lot of points, especially if you have a damn good defense. But I think you have to be able to put up at least 27, 28 points per game in order to be consistently good. Now, that metric could change. We could see the NFL maybe, I don't know. I don't suspect it, but with how the game is played, I expect to see more high scores around the NFL. But if you can get to that range and you can play good defense, I think the Broncos will be good. I think Denver has the personnel. You look at it, there's no excuse why they can't score 25, 27 points per game this season. There really isn't. Unless there's like every key player gets injured again.
Knock on wood, that doesn't happen.
Cody, come on, man. You come into our show and you put this juju on us.
Hey, I knocked on wood. It's okay.
I keep hearing that people are equating offensive points with having a big arm, and that's not necessarily the case. Especially with Sutton, because he's one of those receivers. He can just go out and catch it wherever it is. But when you've got, Tim Patrick isn't necessarily the deep threat as much as a good hands guy, Jerry Jeudy. So you don't really need the big arm in order to score a lot of points. You just need the yards after catch and the yards after contact.
Mm-hmm. And in this West Coast system, you kind of just give the boys the ball and let them do their thing too. So, I mean, I think we have we're so deep at almost every position outside of linebacker and potentially quarterback. I don't know, but we'll see. Cody, that kind of brings me into my next question about where do you see the linebacker depth currently? A lot of people are clamoring for a linebacker to cover a Travis Kelce or a Darren Waller. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily the type of defense that Fangio likes to run. How do you see Fangio incorporating the current linebackers and then moving into these new linebackers that we have that maybe start down the line?
Absolutely. This is a great point. And this is actually something I get in my comment section all the time. People are like, oh, you need a linebacker to cover the tight ends. Well, to be honest with you, in Vic Fangio's defense, 99.5% of the time, the inside backers never cover the tight end unless it's zone coverage. Then you spot drop to like a middle hook to curl zone. But most of the time in Vic's defense, if you go back and you watch the tape, Denver's linebackers, if there's a tailback to the right or if there's a two-back set, the linebackers have man alignment on those running backs. Let's say if there's a running back if I'm Alexander Johnson, and let's say I'm on the right side, and there's a tailback that's lined up to the right side. If he swings out, he's my responsibility. Now, if I'm in zone coverage, I'm spot dropping, I'm taking my read step, I'm opening up to either that curl to seam or that hook to curl in the middle of the field. That's where I think a lot of people get the narrative confused about Broncos not being able to cover tight ends with linebackers. Well, it's not necessarily their responsibility. Zone coverage, Travis Kelce, he eats up anybody, whether you're in man coverage or zone coverage. So you really have to get pressure. You have to have a fast guy. And I think that's why the Broncos have Justin Sternad, who they didn't get to see a lot last year because of that wrist injury. It was a ligament issue where they reset his wrist and then they risked nerve damage. So he had to have surgery. That's why he was out. So they get him back. He's athletic. He's tall. He's fast. He might be an option for them. Then they go and they draft Baron Browning, who can play a multitude of roles. He could play on the outside as an edge guy. He could play inside backer. That's where the Broncos are going to have him. But he's been dealing with a lower leg injury. He sustained in rookie minicamp. So he hasn't been able to get reps in minicamp or OTAs because of that. And they're hoping he's going to be ready for training camp. But missing all those reps from rookie minicamp through OTAs, that is huge. So he's going to be behind the curve a little bit. So that's why Justin Stern is going to have an opportunity. Josh Watson's going to have an opportunity behind Alexander Johnson and Josie Jewell.
Well, and you still got like the Travis Kelce in the Super Bowl. He tore apart that Bucs defense. He still got his yards. So it does. I mean, you can't tell me there's a better linebacking core than the Bucs. I mean,
no.
Yeah.
Their linebackers are good. So I mean, and that's one of the things that they were talking about with Surtain was possibly doing a lot of dime and having him cover the tight end. So I mean, I think they'd have a better shot at doing that than specifically having linebackers on him.
And if the other team has a deep threat, you're going to take those underneath tight end little curls all day. So like, it's just like depends on what you're trying to really go for there.
Just trying to find a balance, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean that's what it's all about. I mean, it's pick your poison, right? If you want to stop, let's say we're playing the Broncos are playing Kansas City. If you want to stop Tyreek Hill, okay, focus your efforts on there, but you have to be prepared to at least neutralize Travis Kelce. You can't shut him down. It's hard. Yeah. I don't think anybody has done that. But if you can contain him, if you're going to make him the primary option, you're going to be okay with that. Now, if you lose a game by just limiting it to Travis Kelce only, then there's something bigger that's wrong, right?
Yeah.
And I think the Broncos last year, they did a really good job against the Chiefs defensively. However, the offense in that first game, there was a pick six. There was a 108-yard kick return touchdown that was given up. That was the difference maker. And obviously a couple of short field positions that were converted into scores. Outside of that, the Broncos defense did really well for the most part against the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, Travis Kelce, he had a massive game on that Sunday night game. He even called the Broncos the Raiders post game. I didn't like that. And I got blown up by a whole bunch of Chiefs fans for saying that he was a punk for that. That's going to be something, that's going to be evergreen content out there. But you're going to live with that, right? If Travis Kelce can have 11 catches, 140 yards, and the Chiefs lose, you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Right.
So Cody, I'm so glad you're on tonight because you've never heard that before, I'm sure.
Oh man, it's a first.
It's so good to have you on because Mundungus was beside himself. He was on the Max Duffy train for the last 3 months.
So mad. I am so mad.
So he gets cut today for 2 wide receivers, right? So, which I don't understand why a wide receiver would sign with this particular team. But they referenced in the press conference, and it's always good to hear you your questions in there. And they mentioned Hinton as one of the surprises that is a real legit threat to make this team. What is your wide receiver prediction for name at this point who you think with the Broncos wide receivers will be on opening day?
This is good. I think they're gonna keep 7 or more. They might actually keep 8. And I think a lot of people are going to look at like, well, why would they carry 8 wide receivers? Well, it all goes to depth and special teams, right? You look at Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Tim Patrick, Deontay Spencer. There's 5. Tyree Cleveland. There's no way Tyree Cleveland's not making this team in 2021. Yeah. So there's 6 guys right there. Kendall Hinton. I tell you this, the Broncos, they love what Kendall Hinton has done because it really goes back to last year when he stepped in at quarterback. Yes, he was outmatched against that Saints defense, but they appreciate him stepping up, willing to take on that role. He offered to say, hey, I'll play quarterback because he's played it at Wake Forest. So and he's been grinding. I mean, he's been helping out. He did some DB stuff at rookie minicamp just to get acclimated, but he's been making plays as a wide receiver. But he's also a key guy that maybe you could use as a gunner on punt. You can use him as a return guy. Tom McMahon told me, on Wednesday that he could be a return option. He's been fielding punts and kicks, and it never hurts. But I also think you can utilize him in different packages. He's athletic, and he's a playmaker. He made a one-handed catch in practice the other day. It was absolutely crazy, too. So Kendall Hinton is in my guy. I think he's going to make the roster. I think Denver, at least on paper, carries 7 wide receivers. The additional guys behind that, you have to wonder, what role will they play on special teams? So I wouldn't be shocked if they carried 7 on the roster this year.
So you think Spencer makes the team?
Yes, as a returner. I mean,
okay.
He's been the most reliable return guy that the Broncos have had since. I would even say Trenton Holiday was, reliable. He was explosive, but he fumbled the ball.
Couldn't hold on to the ball.
He got exploded by McAfee, but yeah.
Isaiah McKenzie even said that Holiday fumbled. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So he has been, I'd say, outside of Jordan Taylor, he's been the most reliable punt returner that actually catches the punt and doesn't drop it. He had like 1 drop, but he recovered it quickly. But I think a lot of the Broncos' issues in the return game, you're not going to get many opportunities to return a kick for a touchdown off a kickoff because if you kick it past, here's Tom McMahon's rule. And this is any rule too, that any NFL special teams coordinator should implement. If the opposing kicker kicks the ball and the ball goes deeper than 2 yards into the end zone, if it goes 2 yards into it, that's your landmark. You can field it and return it. If it goes deeper than 2 yards, you don't return it because then you're going to get stopped at like the 10 or the 15-yard line. Not good field positioning. But Spencer's been the reliable guy on punt return. If there could be better blocking, you have some rookies, some young guys making mistakes, a couple of lanes. Tyree Cleveland against the Jets. I remember he missed the block on the punter. Spencer would have been gone on that one, but Spencer did get one against Carolina. But I just have a hard time seeing Deontay Spencer not on this team, considering the fact he's been reliable at a position where, to be honest with you, Denver's needed a good returner.
EJ with another question. Which rookie draft pick do you see playing at a high level this year?
Ooh, how many of them? That's going to be a good one. To be honest with you, I think that Javonte Williams is going to play a major role. Love Javonte Williams. It'd be cliche to say Patrick Surtain. We know he's going to play a big role. I mean, he is the real deal. If we've got Von Miller, we got all these people saying, hey, this guy's the real deal. He looks great. He looks the part. I believe that. If Champ Bailey says, hey, this is a great pick for the Broncos, you need to get on board with it, I would believe that coming from a guy like Champ Bailey. So no surprise about Surtain, but Javonte Williams, in my opinion, if I had to go outside of the first-round pick, I think Williams will be probably the biggest impact player because he's so much more evolved. He's a physical runner. He runs like C.J. Anderson, in my opinion, which is a good thing. And he's also got really good route running ability. I mean, he made Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah miss when they played Notre Dame. I mean, he made him look silly, and he can also catch the ball too. Now, the issue was several times he had a quarterback that was throwing the ball in the dirt for him, so he didn't really get too many opportunities, but his efficiency, unreal. And he's going to be a security blanket, I think, in the Broncos offense that they didn't have last year. Nothing against Philip Lindsay. We love Phil, but Phil didn't offer that type of bang. Everybody knew that when Philip Lindsay was in the game, okay, the Broncos are going to run the ball. So it's easy to stop that. So Javonte Williams, he's going to offer, I think, more than what Melvin Gordon can, which, Melvin Gordon can still offer a lot, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you got less tread on the tires too.
Absolutely.
Only taking up half the snaps with Michael Carter over there in UNC. I'll take it all day.
But if we can get some play out of Melvin Gordon to work out that $8 million we're paying him this season, instead of him riding the pine, if he's injured, that's one thing, but we are paying him $8 million to play. So while I am confident and really excited to see what Williams brings, if Gordon and Williams can get on the same page, just be that 1-2 punch combo that we love to see in Denver, that'd be great.
Hey, with George Payton as the GM, he's going to make it. Yes. Tell me about that. Was frustrating to watch. Going back on film. But my thing is, George Payton's the general manager. Gentlemen, I have a feeling running the football is going to be a very strong emphasis for this football team.
So I guess
Which is crazy with how our receiving core. Like, you pick your poison, man.
I got 2 questions before we're going to let you go. The first one is, who do you go to figure out those names like Jeremiah Owusu, something Cora?
Them.
Oh, man.
Because I am out. I'm not even going to try.
So let me ask you this. Can you pronounce Albert Okwuegbunam?
Yes.
After lots and lots of practice.
Madden.
Maybe after a beer or two.
Like Alberto is what I stick with.
Yeah,
that's good.
I'm with the boss, Alberto.
The easiest thing for Alberto is he actually pronounces it in his Twitter bio, which was great. I mean, that was the easiest way to pick up on it. But like hearing the CBS broadcast call him Akua Bunam, I was like, oh my goodness, this is brutal, man. But no, I just, I try to, before I pronounce anybody's name ever, I try to go back and watch like some film or like some game broadcast and hear the announcer say it. But there's some of the teams actually, like Pita Tamupenu, he's the newest Broncos outside backer. I had to go to Utah's website to be able to do that. I mean, they had a video of him pronouncing it, so I had to go with that. So I always try to do my research before, I try to say something.
And let's divide Broncos country right now. Locke versus Teddy. Who's going to be the starter?
Well, if I had to give a projection, I just have a hard time. Like, it would have to be very drastic. Like, Drew Lock would have to be so terrible in training camp and preseason in order for him not to be the starter. I think it's going to be Drew. But then again, it's like we never know. Like, crazier things have happened. I have no idea what to expect. Like, for example, you talked about Max Duffy. Like, earlier today, I recorded the podcast. It's up on YouTube now, by the way. During that recording, I talked about Max Duffy. I talked about what Tom McMahon had said. And all of a sudden, bam, he gets cut. So I'm like, well, I can't go back and edit that out. So I'm just going to have to live with it. So it's like, tomorrow we may wake up and all of a sudden, John Elway might come out of retirement to play quarterback. We'll see.
and you know that Fangio isn't going to announce who the starting quarterback is until 5 minutes before the game.
Absolutely.
just what
Cody,
does.
do you mind if I ask you a couple other things?
Absolutely. I got some extra time.
So it's fun watching your career. The trajectory is just going like this. So can you describe what a typical day is for you and like when you record your podcast, how it gets put together, how you secure your guests, things like that?
I tell you what, gentlemen, it is. I look back at when I first started doing Locked On Broncos. I had no idea about any of this media stuff. I had zero clue about it. And, I've gained a lot of confidence along the way. I've had some very, prominent mentors. Dave Logan used to do Locked On Broncos. So it's about gaining confidence. Now, for me, my typical day, obviously with, I was able, this is news I announced earlier this year. I was able to, I was a teacher. I was doing all this. I was teaching during the day, coaching high school football, coming home, doing the podcast and doing all that stuff. And then I added on Pro Football Network. I was able to actually quit teaching, and now I work for Pro Football Network full time, salary, doing all the stuff, talking football, living the dream there. And throughout the day, obviously I do stuff for that, but I put together the podcast. I reach out to people. Obviously I coordinate with Broncos PR from time to time if I need to get a player on, but usually I have access to the Zoom calls. And so it's great to be able to take that video, use it on the show, react, and even give a different perspective to maybe what a coach or what a player said. But then I do all that cut up. So I record it in video format, and then I translate that video format into audio format, cut it up together. I spend probably a good 3 hours, 4 hours of my day just doing my podcast alone, making sure everything's right. Before I do every show, I do a pre-production meeting. I go through, okay, this is what we're talking about here on, in this segment. I need to make sure what I'm talking about lines up with the reality, right? So if I'm using statistics, I want to be accurate. It takes more time, but it's so worth it. But, I also think at the same time too, you talk about it, I think having passion, having energy, I mean, if somebody listens to my podcast, I'm literally talking like this with energy and passion for 30 straight minutes without taking a breath. Like,
right.
That's the hard thing, because I couldn't imagine talking, just like super slow and doing that, especially by myself. I mean, I drive the show really by myself. So it's like, I have to offer something unique. So I try to be as energetic as possible. And this is what you all do a really great job of. You interact with the community that watches your stuff. That's the most important thing. And as somebody that's in the media, I'm nowhere near like where I want to be in the media world, right? I'm a little fish in a big pond, but I'm humble enough to know that it's going to take time. I got to put the work in to earn that respect. But for me, I one thing that even if I get massive, if I get big, if I were ever to get Adam Schefter big as someday, I don't think I ever will. But if I ever did, I still want to interact with everybody that, takes time to consume my content. Because if you're taking 30 minutes out of your day to talk about, to interact and listen to me talk about Broncos football, I can take 1 minute to send a reply to something you send to me. I mean, that is so important. And I just remember coming up in the media world, I tried to ask for advice to several people. They're not going to give it to you. This is a mean industry. I can tell you this. If you ever get a chance to get a media pass and you go to Dove Valley, you're going to meet some people that aren't willing to talk to you. They're kind of like, they want to avoid you. I don't know what that is, right? But then there's people like Ben Albright, Ryan Edwards, George Stoya of the Gazette. I mean, these are phenomenal people that are welcoming. They give people opportunities, which, a lot of people get mad at Ben Albright because he's got this internet persona, but Ben honestly is one of the nicest dudes that I have ever met in my life. Like, seriously, it is so nuts. But I want to give back to people. I want to include Broncos fans in what I do, because if it weren't for Broncos fans, I wouldn't be able to be in the position I am. So, like, if I have a chance to ever get back and to come on your show, I think it's important, because you all do a very great job, and I'm sure you all have aspirations of your own. However I can support that, I mean, that's what I need to do for other people, because nobody did that for me outside of maybe one or two people. I want to give back to Broncos fans. That's so important, and I wish more people did that. But this is such a mean industry. I've never understood it, but it is what it is.
So the other question I wanted to ask you is, so on Twitter today, you made available your T-shirt, the "Don't Be a Filthy Casual." So if you could tell us the background a little bit about that, and also how people can order that, because there is a limited time frame with which to order.
My fiance wants to know, because I told her I bought one today, and I had to explain to her what a filthy casual was. And when I was explaining what a casual was, I think she was starting to realize that maybe she was one. And so then she got kind of offended. So I kind of blame you.
Is she wearing she's wearing the Aaron Rodgers
I'm offended. Yeah.
The I'm offended one. Great marketing by Rodgers, by the way. With the whole "don't be a filthy casual" thing, it's odd because Mario Vitanzi and I, we're good friends. We were on a pod one time, and I think we were just talking about, we see all these hot take articles, and we see a lot of these like really outrageous claims, and we're like, man, that contributes to a lot of the negativity we see on social media, and it creates the outrage. It's almost like a cult in a sense. It's really weird, but it's like, hey, don't be a filthy casual. Like, invest your time in actually like learning the game, like listening to people that, I don't want to say like I know what I'm talking about, because that sounds very like, it sounds like douchey. I don't want to sound like that, but I put a lot of time in terms of watching film and knowing what's going on, having conversations with players and coaches and scouts, and really trying to figure out, hey, what is actually going on? That way I can give the audience more of an insight as to what's going on. That's not going to be in a way like, hey, I know more than you, because the reality is there's people that know a lot more than me. I can't be this person and say, hey, I know more than you, but I want to have that conversation with fans that even if we agree or disagree, we can have an open conversation about it. So it's like, don't be a filthy casual. Don't be this guy that just subjects themselves to clickbait and BS and just all this toxic negativity. Yeah. Those people are filthy casuals. So that's where we kind of coined the term there. And it's crazy. We had Broncos players have it. Michael Ojemudia has a shirt. Shelby Harris has a shirt. Justin Simmons has a shirt. It is nuts, man. So we might see it in a press conference one day. I hope so. That'd be phenomenal.
Yeah. So what size does Shelby wear? What size is Shelby?
Shelby's got the XL. They're super comfortable. It's really crazy.
XL.
Yeah.
That's a shock.
That's
XL
rough for me.
But I'm too fat.
Apparently, he was an ugly kid too, but at least he was.
and he's not allowed to date teammates' daughter or sisters either. So,
can we talk about that for a moment? That is one of the best things of the season. Is that players camp? That is phenomenal. The questions of the day are great, but no, the fabric is comfortable. It's dry fit, so it's really cool. So it's great for like wearing under your pads and everything like that. So that's the appeal we had it with the players. Like, hey, you can wear this as an undershirt. So,
how do you get one? Tell us.
So if you go to my Twitter bio at Cody Rourke NFL, I'll have the tweet pinned that has a link to custom ink. The order closes on July 2nd. So don't be a filthy casual. Get yourself a shirt, and all the proceeds will go to the Colorado Children's Hospital. It's something I'm super, super passionate about. So I don't pocket any of the profits. It goes straight to charity. It's all for a good cause.
Awesome.
Love it.
Well, I was going to say, even if you don't reach the heights of Adam Schefter, which I think you will, you can at least take solace in the fact that you sound like him. So
yeah, there you go.
There's always that.
See, we have Cody on here, and then after hearing him talk and like how well spoken he is and everything, we're just all like, well, should we quit or
no?
Should we go? Oh, okay, no,
not at all.
I will say this is like the longest 32 minutes we've ever sounded professional.
Yeah.
Without cracking some sort of dirty joke.
Agreed.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair.
Hey, I love it though. This stuff is super important, and I really like taking time. I watch a couple of broadcasts. There's some like fan run podcasts out there and shows.
Yeah.
They're okay, but I like yours because you're funny. You have a sense of humor. You engage with the fan base. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, we all love football, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, pull up, have a beer, and let's talk football, and let's laugh along the way. I mean, that's the important part.
So we got one question from Tavis Tarbox. Without a Broncos bias, which defense was the best in your opinion between the 85 Bears, the 2000 Ravens, or the 2015 Broncos?
Well, I tell you what, I wasn't alive in 85, right? And I was only 6 years old in 2000, right? So for me, I mean, in terms of the modern era, watching the Broncos defense, I mean, they were one of the best out there, but that Ravens defense was something fierce. I mean, they were unreal. The way that they were able to get after quarterbacks, take the football away. The 85 Bears, I feel like that defense was played in such a different era of football. Could that defense play in the 2015 season and have that same success? I don't think that they can. So the Bears of that era, best defense ever of that era.
Yeah.
The Ravens defense, I mean, you can make the argument. I think between the Broncos defense and the Ravens defense, you have it could be a coin flip, but I might be a little biased here because I actually wasn't even media in 2015. I was still a fan. So,
well, I was going to say I think they left out was it 2002 Bucks?
Oh,
that Bucks team. Oh man,
Bucks.
John Lynch.
Their defense was good. The Simeon Rice,
Barber,
Warren Sapp.
I was going to say more. I would compare the Broncos more to in 2015 to the 2013 Seahawks. I think that's more of a comparable as far as like era.
Absolutely. Well, think about it. The best offense in the NFL in 2013, the Broncos offense. The best defense at that time, the Legion of Boom. They shut down the best offense. The Broncos in 2015, going against the NFL's best offense, league MVP Cam Newton, they shut it down, especially with Peyton Manning, who wasn't himself. But tell you what, the AFC Championship game and the Super Bowl, while Peyton's stat line in the Super Bowl wasn't great, he managed both of those games really well. He did enough to help the Broncos win. So that defense was unbelievable. I mean, you talk about that secondary, DeMarcus Ware, Von Miller, Derek Wolfe, Malik Jackson, Danny Trevathan, Brandon Marshall. I mean, the list goes on and on. It is so crazy, the players that they had and the way they were able to navigate through that season. I really believe it was a Hollywood season for the Broncos in 2015.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you can look at that the same way with like the 72 Dolphins. Like, do we honestly think that in today's NFL, the 72 Dolphins would go undefeated?
Yes.
No, not like taking nothing away from the 72 Dolphins.
No.
Like, you go undefeated, you go undefeated.
Yeah.
But if you take the 72 Dolphins and put it against like the, 2020 anybody, I don't.
It's a different era, man.
I don't know.
Yeah. And for the record, in 2013, the Seahawks barely skated by a Vic Fangio-led 49ers defense. If it wasn't for one offensive mistake, the Niners would have went to that Super Bowl, and it would have been Broncos versus 49ers.
And that, I mean, that even kind of goes into the argument of, when you're trying to compare stats between like, say everybody's comparing stats between Drew Lock and John Elway's rookie year. You can't really do that. Like,
same person,
completely different eras of football. Like, offenses are different.
And Josh Allen,
defenses are different.
Lamar Jackson,
Josh Allen.
They're all the same.
It's so it's so different. You can't really. It's hard to compare it.
Yeah. Absolutely, and people get fired up about it. Like it's to a point where like people
I've
are like
noticed.
Oh, I literally like I can't engage with that stuff anymore. I'm just like, man, can people talk about something other than quarterback? Because it's like, hey, this is a team that has so much excitement in terms of just the players that they have, that everyone's so focused on QB. You know what? I hate the name call here, but I blame 104.3 The Fan. Back in 2017, they created the stupid hashtag, the quarterback competition, Simeon versus Lynch. It ruined everything. I think that's the reason why things are so crappy around the optics there, man. I'm just ugh.
In the end, Denver lost because we lost both guys, and so
yeah. Rich says, let's not forget Elway out of college and Joe out of college at different experience levels. I say Elway. I think Elway's still considered the most highly touted college quarterback coming out of college, right? It's like I think Elway's number 1, Manning's like number 3.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a strong argument to be had there, for sure.
Andrew Luck was up there.
Somewhere Ryan Leaf disagrees with you, Mike.
Ryan Leaf can suck it. He's no. EJ, Cody Broncos record prediction after 17 games.
Write it down.
EJ, my friend, to be honest with you, I don't get into record predictions because I feel like it's bad luck. I'm very superstitious. When I buy jerseys of players, like in the past, like when I bought Denver Nuggets jerseys, they traded away Melo. Chauncey Billups got traded. I had a Gary Harris jersey. They traded that guy away. So I'm very superstitious. So that's why I don't do record predictions. I like to focus week by week.
So what'd you do for Jokic to get kicked out of that game? What'd you do, Cody?
No, Cody got Cody was wearing camouflage, and they threw out the brothers. Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, you need to pin all those Schefter comments and just take them with you.
Hey, I love it. That it's funny, but I tell you what, if I ever needed personal security, I'm hiring the Jokic brothers. No one's gonna mess with me.
Absolutely, terrifying.
I'd be like, hey, this guy sent me a tweet. He was very rude. Go to his house.
Yeah.
Were you the one that posted them versus the Paul brothers?
Yes.
Oh my gosh!
I would pay $500 to see that.
Their brass knuckles would be out. Like the Jokic brothers would just.
I can't believe they actually threw knives at it. They held him down and threw knives at his head or around his head because he didn't want to climb in a tree as a kid. That is nuts. That tells you I'm not messing with those dudes. I'm hiring them.
And it made the nicest guy ever somehow.
So when you hire them, do they show up like in a harness racing? Like all of a sudden they show up in front of the in front of the victim's home.
I'll give them the key. I'll give them the keys to my car. I'll say, hey, here you go. Make sure
not even trying.
Don't dent it, but make sure don't get no blood inside of it. We're all good. That's how they're crazy, but it's good. Like I would. If I was Jokic, I mean that whole moment too. That was a rough series. I mean Denver's just completely outmatched, outclassed, and that nothing you could do against really two of the best guards in the NBA with Chris Paul and Devin Booker, and just Denver didn't have the bench depth to really carry on. Jokic did his thing, but you can only do so much. And I think that the Nuggets have to rebound, and I think they got to get somebody in free agency this year. Paul Millsap, I love Paul, but it's past time. Give Jokic somebody. Keep JaVale. I mean, I love JaVale. JaVale's a great teammate. Keep him just for antics and everything like that. But bring somebody else in. Try to get a star power there. With everything going on in Dallas, could we see Luka come to Denver?
Oh.
Did you see, by the way, that Booker found the guy that beat up the Nuggets fans and hooked him up? Did you see that?
Well, I actually seeing the video how everything started. That Nuggets fan poured the beer over his head.
Yeah,
that caused it. Like, I'm sorry, somebody did that. I'm going into flight mode, and I might just swing. Like, it's okay.
It needs to happen. Yeah, at that point, it needs to happen. There's not a choice.
The worst part was the Suns and 4 thing. Oh my god! But I can't be mad at the Suns fan. He defended himself, and those guys made everybody, all the rest of the Nuggets fans look like knuckleheads for a night. But
it made all of Denver look bad. The way the Denver fan swung first, and then the dude just held him and was looking at his homie.
How do you have top
advantage?
Holding
his chain.
Like, I'd walk away. I'd be like, bro, you did this to yourself, and I'm not fighting that.
Good luck getting home.
He had the elevation advantage too. It's like, how do you have top ground and still screw up? Like,
that's why you got to bring a Don with you and everything. Just put him in front.
He's 6 foot. He's literally 6 foot 10.
Act like you're trying to get around him. Like what?
Yeah, that's what a lot of people do. They stand around me.
Man.
So since you took the easy way out with the Locke versus Bridgewater question, here's another one for you.
All right.
Elway or Manning?
Ooh, this is rough. Look, John Elway, when we look at just from what he was able to do from a physical aspect, I mean, he would take like a 10 drop back, like a 10-step drop, and still sidearm it 70 yards down the field. He made it look so damn easy. I would say from a physical standpoint, John Elway. If I'm talking about a cerebral preparation standpoint, even if he didn't have the strongest of arms, Peyton Manning knew where to go. I mean, I don't think there's anybody smarter in football than Peyton Manning. You can maybe make the argument about Tom Brady. I would really love to see those two sit side by side and chalk talk. Peyton is so ridiculous that did you see the report that Ben Garland put out there that he demanded that Adam Gase have the coaching plan ready, the game plan ready by Tuesday, not Wednesday, by Tuesday. That right there is unbelievable. Peyton Manning, I think, would make a phenomenal coach in the NFL because he would demand the best out of everybody. But I don't think we'll ever see it. He's such a stable name. I don't think we'll ever see him in coaching, but I think we're going to see him in a front office role sometime. Could it be for the Broncos? Probably not, but wishful thinking. He loves Denver. He's always at practices, so that's a win in my book.
Tennessee. I mean, he lives down the street, right? I mean,
ownership questions.
Man, I'm telling you, go back and watch that Broncos versus Chargers game in 2012. The way Peyton Manning just brought back the team. And I remember that game because I was sitting there thinking like, oh my God, I'm going to catch so much crap from a couple of Chargers fans I knew. And then I'm so glad I didn't tune away. I sat and watched the whole game. And then Chris Harris just beautiful. Tony Carter with that scoop and score as well. But here's what really jump-started it. Demaryius Thomas ran a great play. It was a corner post. And the window, Peyton's like, bloop, there we go. And he just had that look in his eye. And I remember that look. And I actually have a GIF of that because there was the GIF of him going into halftime just looking like all downtrodden, down 24-0. And all of a sudden, that was the change. I mean, that really elevated Denver. And unfortunately, that was the year. I mean, Denver could have been to the Super Bowl 3 out of Peyton's 4 years. And if it weren't for damn Joe Flacco, who screw Joe Flacco.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
On multiple fronts.
Yeah,
on multiple fronts.
Raheem Moore will not make the Ring of Fame. I'm making
no
hot take right now.
And I mean, you could say that Demaryius Thomas was the greatest wide receiver ever because he can catch balls from Manning and Tebow.
Yeah.
Like you catch a Tebow ball, that's impressive.
People forget that Demaryius Thomas, like, he really came into his own with Tim Tebow. Peyton Manning just elevated it. I mean, remember that Minnesota Vikings game where the Broncos were on the road at Minnesota? Andre Goodman was just getting torn apart by Christian Ponder, of all people. And all of a sudden, here comes Tim Tebow throwing to DT. I mean, that was really the rise of DT. And, he's one of those Broncos players that gets so much flack, I think, from a portion of the fan base. Probably the same toxic people that we all have to deal with now. But I tell you what, one of the most underappreciated guys, worked so hard. And my first year covering training camp was his last year as a Bronco. And seeing him work with Cortland Sutton and Deshaun and really take time to instruct them, he's a selfless dude, man. And I wish DT, I want him to be in the Ring of Fame selfishly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you heard it here first. Cody Rourke says that Tim Tebow is the greatest quarterback of all time. He can raise ships and save seasons.
Be careful on Twitter now because I'm going to say the Jokic brothers after people.
I think out of anybody except for possibly you, I would love to get in fights on Twitter. I get in fights all the time for the dumbest things.
I will say that the dumbest question or the most furious I've ever been about a question about the Broncos was someone asked me if I was a Broncos fan because I jumped on the Tim Tebow bandwagon.
Oh, man.
I almost lost my mind.
That's when you just give the single yes.
He threw a slant pass. He threw a slant, guys.
Hey, it was the greatest slant of all time.
Oh my
man.
John Elway's face after that was just like,
that's a Ring of Fame slant throw right there.
People forget. I think people forget the post John Elway years, and then we were blessed a little bit with Jake Plummer, and then all of a sudden they derailed Jake Plummer way too soon. The Cutler years, he had the talent. I feel like if Jay Cutler was never traded, maybe, I don't know. Does Peyton Manning ever happen if Cutler's never traded? I have no idea. But I feel like the Broncos, unfortunately, it's Josh McDaniels' fault, gave up on Cutler a little too much. Yes, the attitude was there, but, man, his traits were ridiculous. But outside of that, we were fortunate to all watch Peyton Manning for 4 years, and all of a sudden, it's not Peyton Manning. We got I mean, the quarterback carousel has to stop at some point. I'm sick of that damn graphic.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
They somehow just keep it in their external hard drive just for, rainy days and post it every single time. But luckily we have no primetime games. Or we have one.
We're going to be that
one,
Browns
yeah.
jersey
We
soon
have one
where it has
primetime
all
game.
the quarterbacks.
I mean, you can't really complain about the quarterbacks in between, like, Plummer and Elway. I mean, you got Bubby Brister.
Greasy.
Awesome. Greasy. Amazing. When was Orton? Was that before or that after?
Orton
That was after.
That was
what
they
that
traded
was
with the Bears.
the fun
That was-
7-3 game against the Chiefs.
Oh my gosh!
Lost
Thank
my
God for
mind.
Eric Decker, man. Eric
Oh.
Decker was the hero of that game.
Oh my gosh, I can't.
Eric Decker also found out that the grass isn't greener on the other side either.
Yeah,
Ooh,
I hope-
he did
I
not
hope-
play well after
Julius
that.
Thomas.
yeah. I hope Tennessee was worth it, Eric.
Yeah. It wasn't.
And then Jets.
Mhm.
See, the grass was greener. He got a lot of green to go to New
Yeah,
York.
that's true.
Where do you rank our offensive line this year?
Oh, tough to say. I mean, I
Number
like
one.
I like the O line. I just don't know where I'd rank them right now, considering that right tackle is a huge question mark. Bobby Massey dealing with the pec strain. I'm telling people, look, I think it's going to be Calvin Anderson. I think Calvin is finally in a position to where he's going to succeed. He's been stashed away behind Mike Munchak for the last 2 years. There was a reason he's been on the active roster since he was brought off the practice squad. I believe it was from the New York Jets in 2019. Calvin's going to surprise people, but he's injured right now. He should be ready to go for training camp.
Thank you. No one else believes me about Calvin Anderson.
I still think it'd be Massey.
Don't underestimate.
Well,
underestimate.
who's the other one that's behind Massey? The
Cam
one we just
Fleming.
signed?
Fleming.
Yeah,
Fleming.
Fleming.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think
Because
he's Fleming.
I
Do you
figured they
see
were going to
Miners
stick
at-
Anderson behind Bowles and leave him there.
Do you
'Cause he
see
played a lot
Miners
better left
stepping
than right.
up, or do you think Kush is just going to kind of hold out on that at starting center for at least 8.5 games now?
don't know.
5. What's 500 now? 8.5.
It's really tough to project because
It's
Quinn
not
comes out of
8.5.
that D3. I mean, you can't even get all 22 film on Wisconsin Whitewater. It's all through huddle. That's how you. I mean, that's the level of competition. But I mean, he does have these impressive traits to it. He dominated at the Senior Bowl. He was arguably one of the best players there. But I don't think that we're going to see him start in 2021. I think that Cushenberry. I think he's going to take the next step now. Cush's thing really is knowing more of the playbook and getting stronger, because often at times he'd make contact and then he'd stop his feet. And when you have a defensive lineman that lines up head up on you in a zero technique or in a one technique on one of your shoulders and slants inside, you have to step down and help. So, for example, let's say that there's a one tech to the right side, right? So obviously Graham Glasgow is right there next to him. If that D tackle slants inside, he and Graham Glasgow, they have to double team initially. And if that linebacker comes, he has to communicate, okay, hey, I'm stepping here. It's really just about I'm stepping down, but my eyes are looking at that linebacker. I'm making contact with the shoulder. There was not a lot of that last year. There was a lot of miscommunications between the Broncos and really stemmed at center. So for Cush, that's a big thing. But he knows the pressure is on. And I liked his press conference last week where he talked about, hey, I didn't play well enough. I know that's why they did what they did, and I had to come out and perform. So I love it.
None of those
Did you see
0
the,
or 1 techs weigh more than a tree, though. So Quinn Miners.
Quinn Miners. I was going to say along that lines, would you rather have Glasgow or Muti?
Oh, that's tough. I just talked about this on the podcast. I like Graham Glasgow.
I know, that's why I brought it up.
if Graham can stay healthy, he'll be good this year. But obviously, at his price tag, if you feel like Netani Muti can be even more at a cheaper rate, you go with Netani Muti. I want to see Netani Muti just because he mauls people. I was so impressed in that Carolina game. He pulls tight down the line of scrimmage, and he just, whatever is the different color jersey, he's destroying them. I loved it. He went and killed a cornerback. He killed one of the cornerbacks for the Panthers in that game. I remember the play, and I was like, man, this guy is intense. So, God, it's so hard to say because, Graham, when healthy, can be good, especially in pass protection. But Netani Muti, man, is just this jack of all trades. If you need to run the ball well, run behind Netani on a pull play. It's going to be great.
I think
You know,
we would
it's
have
funny,
one
you
of
see
the
Moody's
meanest
stuff.
offensive lines, though, if we stuck. Like, can you imagine Garrett Bowles, Reisner, Muti, Miners, and then whoever on at right tackle? If they were actually productive, how mean of an offensive line that would be. They would run everyone over.
They need that. You need mean offensive linemen.
Yeah.
I see Moody's mom in the comment section of the Bronco pressers, and when Bowles was talking, she's like, Hi, Garrett.
I guess the next big offensive line question I have is, are you able to show belly when you're playing in a game?
You should be able to.
Because if you
You
are,
should be able to.
like miners all the way.
Well,
Like,
yeah.
hike that jersey up. Just put your belly on them.
Should have got the Madden cover. BS.
Man.
The
BS.
Madden cover that came out
That was
today
so
was total
great.
garbage. I'm sorry.
I played with offensive linemen that literally had their jersey all the way up to their chest plate, and all
Yeah.
you saw was the gut. It's like that's what let linemen be linemen. That's what they're for. Like they're
trying to
mean, they're
cool
nasty. It's funny, man. I tell you what, though, that position room probably stinks.
Yeah.
Because I coached high school ball, and I tell you what, like walking past where the linemen had their lockers, I almost puked every day. I was like, man, y'all need to take your stuff home. No one does that. Linemen, they'll piss in their practice pants and they'll wear them the next day just to do it.
So what kind of
It's
coach
weird.
were you? How describe your coaching style when you were
Anti-pant pisser.
Man,
I was gonna say, he lets his lineman pee in the pants. So that kind of coach.
well, the fine line too, especially coaching high school. I'm a young guy, right? So it's like these young guys, they want to gravitate towards you. For me, I think that you had to learn really quickly the difference between being a coach and not being their friend. So that was one thing. Like I coached DBs. I had a really good position group, some really coachable kids. I had some, kids that were just assholes too. And, it's unfortunate. That's the nature of coaching. You're going to run into that. But for me, I was more of the coach. Like I wanted them to put the time in. Like if I'm watching film, I want them to be watching film. But just the culture of high school sports these days, gentlemen, depending on where you're at, unless you're at like Cherry Creek or Valor Christian, it's different. It's super different. You don't have necessarily the buy-in as much. You have more obstacles like drugs and alcohol, skipping class, not being academically eligible. That's just an issue we ran into with the team that I coached for. And we were always wondering, like, what the hell are we going to deal with this week? But for me, the type of coach I feel like I wanted to be known as a transformational coach, a coach that's going to be there for his players, support them, and also tell them what they don't want to hear at times because they need that or else they're never going to go anywhere in life. My coaches were that for me when I was in high school. So I wanted to be the coaches that I had. And so that kind of drove me into the whole world that I live in now. And I operate on that mindset.
All right. So last big question, and this is the most important one that you're ever going to answer in your life.
All right. I already had to answer a crazy one. So
Yeah.
Favorite Broncos player of all time?
ooh, this is tough. I might be biased a little bit just because I played corner, but look, it's hard to argue against Champ Bailey or Steve Atwater. Though, those are the guys I grew up on. Like I grew up as a kid, at 4 years old, I had those fake Broncos helmets and things like that. Steve Atwater was so damn fun to watch. I don't think he'd be able to make it in today's game. He'd be suspended. He'd hit somebody so hard. Yeah, they'd suspend him, 12 games. But Steve, because the way that he was on the field and off the field, Champ Bailey, just from a damn positional aspect, one of the greatest players I've ever seen. He made it look so easy to play corner, which is the hardest position in football, in my opinion. He made it look so damn easy. That's why when Champ Bailey says anything, I listen. And Champ, fortunately for me, Champ follows me on Twitter. We've had a couple of great engagements. So I like to, I might be biased there.
Are you
going to say
including
Jerry Rice? Jerry Rice isn't your favorite Bronco of all time?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
I'm just glad that some of that you didn't say like Elway or Davis because everybody says Elway. That's the cheater way out.
It is.
so
Don.
Rogers
So
Kamara.
Cody,
Hey,
what's it like?
it's true. I'm not gonna lie.
So Cody, growing up a Broncos fan and being into Champ and Atwater, now you've had the opportunity to interact with them. What was that like when you first got to meet these guys as a grown man?
Man, it's crazy because my first training camp practice, I used to call in on Orange and Blue 760 all the time, right? So that's when that was still around. And I just remember being at practice. I'm sitting there talking to Andrew Mason and Ryan Edwards, and all of a sudden somebody walks up behind me, puts their hands around me, and Steve Atwater. And I'm like, hey, what's up, Steve? And we just had a great conversation. We talked about, hey, can you come play flag football this weekend with all of us? Things like, he's like, you don't want me out there. He's just a laid back guy, but Steve's also somebody that's willing to give you advice and pointers. And I would actually say for like me getting in media, Steve was actually one of those people I was referring to that, was willing to give advice and willing to talk. And so before Broncos practice, one morning I was out there. I was probably the only one out there outside of like the morning radio shows. And he came up and he talked to me, and that's just the kind of guy that Steve is on and off the field. Champ Bailey, man, he's a laid back dude. same vibe as a player. He was always laid back, but even just, away from the game, he's so laid back. He has a unique perspective on everything. So kind of game changing in a sense, being able to actually talk to those people I watched as a kid. So it's crazy.
Amazing.
Awesome.
That's great. Are you including Champ Bailey's years at Washington as well, and not just in Denver's?
You
Like
you
his whole
might,
career?
Nobody cares about Washington.
he was a dog in Washington. I can't believe that the Washington football team said, "Hey, we're gonna trade. We'll take Clinton Portis. You'll give you Champ Bailey. Greatest trade ever. Thank you, Washington."
Oh my God. My buddy tries to troll me when Champ went into the Hall of Fame. He was like, "Oh, you mean Washington football team Champ Bailey?" And I was like, "Bro, you're a Seahawk fan. I'm going to say that when Marshawn goes into the Hall of Fame."
like you can't even figure out a name.
Buffalo
for your
Bill.
team. Like you can't claim anything.
Or Richard Sherman.
Yeah,
I love it.
And I still think it should be the Washington team for football, the WTFs. They should have switched that around. That would have been perfect.
I get it so confused, man.
I like the Rubies. Rubies. If they go Rubies, I swear I'm going to be so excited.
When was Rubies on the table?
Oh, Rubies was on the table. Washington Rubies.
Because I know they were
Yeah.
going to do like Red Wolves and Red Tails.
No, it was on the list. Washington.
Sentinels, Fire, something with fire.
So
I will say this though, the fan that like copyrighted all those names, brilliant.
Yeah.
So Cody, I know
Yeah.
I know we've kept you way too long, and I mean we can't thank you enough. I wanted to ask you if you don't mind, who is your dream interview as you book your pod, and who was the hardest person, or what was the most creative you had to do route you had to get an interview that you did already?
Oh man, my dream interview. I think it would be Adam Schefter. I'm still trying to get both of us on the same time because I really want to mess with people. I'm actually going to bring back. I'm going to bring back a video series. I'm going to post it on Twitter. It's called Shefty Says. And I'm going to it's going to be screenshots of his tweets, but I'm going to be doing the voiceover reading the tweets. So I love it. That's coming. The craziest thing I've ever done. I haven't really had to do anything too crazy to do it. I did drain my savings account to get Will Parks on a recurring segment, to be able to do that. But it was crazy. I pitched the idea to him. I said, "Hey, Will, I do a podcast covering the Broncos every day. I would love to have you at least once per week in season to be able to have your own segment, talk about what you're doing in the community, and then we could get to football after that. And we're going to call it Keeping It Will." And bam, he's like, "I love it." And so I contacted his agent, and then, everything worked out from there. It costs. Now, I've also learned too this offseason, I actually don't have to pay players to come onto my podcast. Most of them are actually willing to do it, but some want money. Nothing against Will. I love it, but it was, I felt like at the time it was a worthy investment for me to make. And I appreciate Will giving me the opportunity, but there's no way I'm paying anybody like that to ever appear. So it's crazy because it's only like 10 to 15 minutes.
Well, and I mean, that's a good thing. Cause like right now, if we try to do that, it'd be like, well, I can give you a hug. Like,
I love it.
You want a bag of M&Ms or something? Like, I'll send you some M&Ms in the mail. Like, what?
Were you surprised the Broncos didn't keep Parks, especially at such a reduced price tag that he was making? I mean,
it's tough to say. I don't know. I think that the Broncos just brought him back this season because of the fact that he knows the nickel position, especially when Duke Dawson went down with an ACL and Asang Bassi went down. They are like, "Hey, who can we throw in at this position?" Well, Will Parks luckily was available. And so they went out and they got him. They loved having him back. I mean, he's so energetic. He's well loved in the locker room. But I think that for the Broncos, for George Payton, they were like, "Hey, we're gonna draft our future replacements." And I think that's what they were at. You have PJ Locke on the roster, who PJ is a very promising young player. He's going to be a fun player to watch grow and develop. We're going to see a lot of him in preseason. But outside of that, you have Caden Stearns, Jamar Johnson. It didn't make sense to bring Will Parks back at that point. And Denver never really reached out to his agent or even said, "Hey, we're interested in bringing him back." They never reached out. And so, Kansas City, they're going to get an energetic player. I think he's going to get some run as a rotational guy there. And, I wish Will the best. He's, great dude, phenomenal dude. Love Will, but except 2 times on Sundays.
Yeah.
So I keep noticing that anytime we have a guest on the show, they're like, "I'll be here for like 20 minutes, 25." And then they're here the whole entire hour.
You guys make it seem easy, man. You guys make it easy.
But
Time flies.
We gotta get to getting. We gotta head out. So we do want to thank Cody for joining us.
Yeah.
For the entire episode.
Thank you so much.
Other than at Cody Rourke NFL, is there anywhere else that they can reach you, they can get a hold of you, or that you want them to go to?
Absolutely. If you want to listen to Locked On Broncos, we do a daily podcast all year long, literally Monday through Friday. We have a new Broncos podcast talking about everything. It's on your favorite audio podcasting platforms. We now launched the show recently, Locked On Broncos. We launched it on YouTube. So if you want to see my ugly mug on your TV screen, you can definitely search for that on YouTube, Locked On Broncos. Hit that subscribe button. But before you hit subscribe on my channel, all of you need to get these guys to 1K, damn it. I might even throw something special in there. I might even buy you a Don't Be a Filthy Casual t-shirt and send it to you personally if you guys can get them to 1K. They do a phenomenal job. You need to do that. And then after you subscribe to them, then you can subscribe to me.
Give us some Built Bars. I want Built Bars.
We are on that quest for 1,000. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
So
oh my gosh.
Make sure that you're hitting that thumbs up button, subscribing, turning on notifications, and share everything that we post so that you can see the content, you know when it's posted, and all the Broncos fans out there in Broncos country can know that we are here. And then you go over and you subscribe to everything that Cody Rourke's got going on, whether it's Locked On Broncos, Locked On Network, everything. It doesn't even matter. But make sure you are joining us and tuning in at 6543 on Sundays for the Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue podcast with Johnny and Isaiah, at 7654 on Tuesdays with Broncos Talk with 6'10" and Rich. And we're going to head out. But we have one thing to do, and we got to get Cody to do it. I don't think he's ever done it.
What are you doing?
I don't know if you've ever heard of the Mile High Five.
I saw it on the intro video, and I was like, that's dope. Okay.
That was started by Johnny and Isaiah, and that's who that was in the intro video. They do the Mile High Five. So it's Mile High Five, and then you clap over your head. Their goal is to get that said over the comms.
You haven't even got me to do
Power
it.
Stadium. We got you to do it twice, just half-assed. You were like, that doesn't count.
All right. So we'll do it. What do I say?
I'm gonna yell out Mile High Five, and then you just clap over your head. That's all it is. Okay, we ready?
Yes.
All right, Mile High Five. Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. We will see you on Sunday with the Nothing Rhymes podcast. See ya.
Adios.
Bye.